Welcome back to the layout. Today we have another how-to video for you. We're going to be showing you how we installed our operating model railroad crossing gates onto the peninsula, and this is without a doubt one of the highlights of the scene. Having the gates come down at a realistic slow speed and watching the lights flash in a realistic manner just adds a lot of realism and is sure to catch a lot of eyes whenever you have new people coming to the layout. So I just wanted to share with you guys how we installed this. Today we're going to be using a controller and detection by SignalLogic Systems. The gates are by NJ International, and the signals themselves are by Walthers. So let's go and get started with the installation. So welcome back to the layout. We're going to be using a couple different components here. I'll talk you through them very briefly before we begin the install. The gate arms are by NJ International. The signals are from Walthers. And then the actual components that operate everything are by SignalLogic Systems. You can see their website on the bottom of the label there. And I've used a couple different systems, to be totally honest. I think that this one just works the best and it has the best results. So I definitely recommend them. We're using the kit with the bell. And you can see it's got the grade crossing controller, the CR2, 2 servo motors, 10 photocells, and then a BL2 bell module, which is what makes the sound. So that's what we have here. The only other thing we need is a speaker. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's go and get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is install the detection. For this, we're using photocells, and the reason for that is we've used IR infrared in the past, which is great because it works well at night, but we're having just a little bit of a hard time with some overhead light tripping the IR sensors on different parts of the layout. So that's why I decided to do photocell here, and really we don't run at night all that often. But here's how we're going to wire it, and one thing I want to mention real quick is I was talking with a gentleman from SignalLogic, and he was working with some light modulation techniques with IR to make sure that that's not a problem in the future. So my guess is that he's got that figured out by now, because I got this a couple months ago. But anyways, how it's wired, there's actually several different photocells which detect the incoming train, and then there's an island section here, or the crossing track, which is where the road is, and that's separate. So you can see they're all wired to a common, they're wired in series, and then the westbound track, eastbound track, and the crossing track on different sides, and the crossing track in the middle there are all wired individually in series with one common. So you just follow the diagram and the instructions here. So I've laid out the 2 infrared sensors for the crossing track here. So these are occupied, the gates will always be down, and then once a train clears these, the gates will go up. And then I have evenly spaced detectors, a little bit longer across the bridge there, all the way across, and then same thing, working our way up around this way. And one thing I want to mention as you decide where to place your detector units, you just want to make sure that you have enough time for the train to get there. So one thing, I put them a little bit farther away. I think it's really neat, just like in real life, where the gates come down and they actually stay down for about 10 seconds before the train actually gets to the crossing. So just keep in mind how fast your trains are running. This is a hill with some tight curves and a steep grade, so trains don't go too fast through here. So the last detection, or the farthest away, is actually at the end of the bridge over there. So that's about 15 to 20 seconds for a train to get up here. Plenty of time for the gates to come down and stay down for a couple seconds before the train crosses, just like real life. So using an 1/8 inch drill bit, I'm going to go ahead and just drill out the holes here and then begin wiring these in series, and we'll connect them to the module there in just a few minutes, and I'll show you that. So just as I was talking about, I went and got the first photocell placed here. The next one is placed right here, here, and then the last one again is right here. You can see they're pretty inconspicuous, pretty small, so it's really not that obtrusive. And then we have the island photocells here, so anytime a train is on these, it's down, and then as soon as a train clears these, the gates will go up. And then again, around this way, I have more as well. All right, so here's the CR2. It's the controller for all the gates and lights and everything like that. And then this here is the BL2. This is the sound module, and it actually plugs into the motherboard here, into the bell output. So according to the directions, we're just going to install it. You want to make sure that the power is off while you install it. And it just slides in right like that. And now our module has sound. All right, so we've got the base in for a cantilever signal, and for the gate, you can see the gate. It's just gonna go ahead and sit right here. We'll get the wires attached and everything to that in a little while. But for the cantilever signal, I went and drilled through the layout, and one thing I actually did was install a little stir straw. What I usually do this for is just to guide the wires, so you can stick the wires into the straw to feed them through, because usually they don't go all that smoothly through the wood. You can feed them all the way through, and then you can pull the straw out from under the bottom. It's just a really great and easy way to install wires through the benchwork. Once you get them through the bottom, obviously you can start pulling from underneath. It makes things just a little bit quicker and easier. So you can see, obviously it's not like sitting quite straight, but our crossing will look something like that. And then eventually we'll get some ballast and stuff to put around the bottom here. All right, so to control the gate arms themselves, we're gonna be using servos. We're gonna wire these up to the control board. But first we just wanted a solid piece of wood to hold everything in place. So we went ahead and mounted them onto this little 1x4 piece of wood here. It's actually an old piece of trim that we used, but it's gonna do the job perfectly. It's gonna hold them in place and hold them steady, and pretty much is gonna go underneath the layout, right underneath the two gate arms. Then we'll connect it, and I'll show you how we do that right here in a second. So pardon the bright light, but what we're doing here is just mounting the mechanism arm and bracket to the underside of the layout. So we're now going to hook everything up and put all the wires onto the board. So first, I showed you previously that we had added a stir straw to feed the wires through. I'm going to remove that. You can see I just pulled that out from the bottom. I'm then going to feed the wires underneath the board, which we've mounted between the two servo motors, and hook them into the lighting outputs on the board. Again, if you have this controller, you can just follow the lighting diagram and the wiring diagram shown in the manual. So we're just going to wire these in. One thing I actually really like about this board is that everything either plugs in or screws in very easily. There's no soldering required. So for instance, for the bell module, you just plug that in. You can see that the servo motors just plug in with the black, red, and yellow wires on the right. Those are plugins as well. And then everything else is just held in place with screw terminals. So you can see you simply feed the wire in and then use a screw to clamp it down, and that holds it in place. It's easy to remove if you need to change anything or replace anything. So it's just very well designed and laid out, and that's one of the reasons we chose to go with this particular system, because it's pretty easy to set up. So we're going to wire everything together, put it into place, and then the last thing we're going to do is install the power wires. And the reason we're doing this last is just to make sure that even though it's off, we don't want to accidentally wire something backwards. We want to make sure everything's in place, wired correctly before we install the power. So that's what we did there. We installed the power wires last. And then lastly, you can see that there's two wires hanging down. These are actually metal rods. It's piano wire. We're going to connect those to the gate arm motors. And that just took a little bit of finesse, a little bit of time, so I didn't want to waste your time showing that. But pretty much we just made an L in the wire and attached it to the servo arm. So once attached to the servo arm, it then pretty much connected the servos to the gate arms, and then the movement of the servo was directly correlated to the movement of the gate arms. After that, you can program it. I didn't want to show you all that. It took a lot of time and a lot of finesse, but it was fairly easy to do. It's well laid out, and you just follow the instructions in the manual. So I was going to let you do that. But a couple neat things I wanted to mention is that you can actually program several different characteristics into this module. You can change how fast or how slow the gate arm raises and lowers. You can program the servos to go exactly as high or as low as you want whenever the gate arms are raising and lowering. And you can also change things like how the bell rings. For instance, you can have the bell ring the entire time the crossing is on and activated, or you can have it set like we do, where the bell simply comes on whenever the gate is lowering. It turns off after that when the train is going by, and then it'll turn back on when the gate is raising, just like a lot of the crossings we see around here. So lots of different variables. We're pretty happy with it. Just want to share this with you guys. I hope it was helpful.
And I'll see you next time. We're going to take one more look at a train going by. We'll see our work now that it's finished. And if you have any questions, please just let me know in the comment section below. I'd be happy to try to help you out and answer any questions you might have. So until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
What do you mean you don't really know?
Like, how do you get the distance right? You know,
Oh, do you have the paper